The rain came down in sheets that November night, turning the Chicago streets into rivers of reflected neon. Imani Brooks pulled her security jacket tighter as she made her rounds past the downtown office buildings. Her shift had 3 more hours to go, and her feet already ached in her worn boots. She almost missed him. A figure lay crumpled on the sidewalk ahead, half hidden between 2 parked cars. Imani's heart jumped as she ran forward, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The man was young, maybe close to her own 26 years, wearing expensive clothes now soaked through. His face was pale, lips slightly blue, and he wasn't moving. Sir, can you hear me? Imani dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her fingers to his neck. A pulse, thank God. Weak but there. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands, giving the dispatcher their location while checking him for injuries. No blood, no obvious trauma. But something was very wrong. The man's phone lay next to him on the wet concrete, its screen cracked but still glowing. Imani picked it up, swiping past the lock screen that thankfully wasn't password protected. She needed to find family, someone who should know he was here, alone and unconscious in the rain. The contacts list was short. Mom, Dad, Paul, office. Her finger hovered over Dad before pressing it. The phone rang twice. Jonathan. It's late. Is everything all right? The voice was deep, cultured, concerned. Sir, this isn't Jonathan. My name is Imani Brooks. I'm a security guard downtown, and I just found your son unconscious on the street near Michigan Avenue. The ambulance is on its way, but I thought you should know. The silence on the other end lasted only a heartbeat. Which hospital are they taking him to? Northwestern Memorial, sir. That's the closest. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Stay with him, please. Whatever you need, whatever this costs you, I'll take care of it. Just please stay with my son. The call ended. Imani looked down at the unconscious man, brushing wet hair from his forehead. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. She didn't know who this Jonathan was or why his father sounded so desperate. She only knew she wouldn't leave him alone. Have you ever held a stranger's life in your hands and wondered if one choice could change everything? Drop a comment below and subscribe to see how this one night transforms 2 lives forever. The paramedics arrived within minutes, working quickly to stabilize Jonathan before loading him into the ambulance. Imani climbed in with them, still holding his phone, still unable to walk away. One of the EMTs gave her a strange look, but she just shook her head. She'd called his father. She'd made a promise, even if unspoken. At the hospital, everything became a blur of fluorescent lights and hurried footsteps. Doctors whisked Jonathan away through double doors while a nurse directed Imani to the waiting area. She sat in an orange plastic chair, her uniform still dripping rainwater onto the linoleum floor, and waited. The man who burst through the emergency room doors 20 minutes later could only be Jonathan's father. He was tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Imani made in 6 months. His eyes scanned the waiting room frantically until they landed on her, the only person in a soaked security uniform. Miss Brooks. He crossed to her in long strides. Imani stood. Yes, sir. They took him back about 10 minutes ago. I haven't heard anything yet. Richard Pierce. He extended his hand and she shook it, noting the firm grip and the genuine fear in his eyes. Thank you for calling me. Thank you for staying with him. Can you tell me exactly what happened? She explained finding Jonathan, calling 911, the ambulance ride. Richard listened intently, his jaw tight with worry. When she finished, he pressed a business card into her hand. That's my personal assistant's number. Call him tomorrow. I want to make sure you're compensated for your time tonight, and for your compassion. Not many people would have stayed. I just did what anyone would do, Imani said, uncomfortable with the gratitude in his eyes. No, Richard said quietly. You didn't. You did what a good person does. There's a difference. A doctor emerged through the doors, and Richard moved toward her immediately. Imani stayed back, feeling suddenly like an intruder in a private moment. But Richard turned and gestured for her to come closer. Miss Brooks found my son. She deserves to hear this too. Dr. Helen Rodriguez looked tired but calm. Mr. Pierce, your son is stable. He had a severe hypoglycemic episode, his blood sugar dropped dangerously low. He's diabetic, correct? Richard nodded. Type 1, since he was 12. He manages it well, usually. He told the nurses he skipped dinner because of a late meeting and forgot to adjust his insulin. Combined with the stress and the cold, his body couldn't compensate. If he'd been out there much longer. The doctor's meaning was clear. But he wasn't. Someone found him in time. Richard turned to Imani, and she saw his eyes were wet. You saved my son's life. The words felt too big, too heavy. Imani shook her head. I just made a phone call. You made the right call. And you stayed when you didn't have to. Richard took a breath, composing himself. Can I see him? He's resting, but yes. Room 3. Dr. Rodriguez pointed down the hall. Richard started to follow the doctor, then paused. Miss Brooks, please don't leave yet. I'd like to speak with you again before you go. Imani nodded, sinking back into the orange chair. Her shift had ended an hour ago. Her supervisor had probably noticed she never checked back in. But somehow, none of that seemed to matter right now. She pulled out her own phone and texted her sister Tamara that she'd be home late, everything was fine, just helping someone. The waiting room clock ticked toward 3 a.m. Imani dozed in her chair, jerking awake periodically when nurses passed or doors opened. Around 4 a.m., Richard returned, looking exhausted but relieved. He's sleeping now. The doctor says he'll need to stay for observation until tomorrow, but he's going to be fine. Richard sat in the chair next to Imani. Because of you. I'm glad he's okay, Imani said simply. My assistant Paul will call you tomorrow. I meant what I said about compensating you. Imani hesitated. Her pride wanted to refuse, to say she didn't do it for money. But her bank account had $247 in it, rent was due in a week, and Tamara needed textbooks for the spring semester. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Thank you, she said instead. That's very kind. Richard studied her for a moment. You work security downtown? Yes, sir. Night shift, 5 days a week. What do you want to do? Long term, I mean. The question surprised her. I'm taking online classes. Business administration. Hoping to move into corporate security eventually, maybe management. You have ambition. Good. Richard handed her another card, this one with his own name on it. I own Pierce Industries. We always need good people in security. People with integrity. Call Paul tomorrow. We'll discuss options. This time, the offer felt too big to accept so easily. Mr. Pierce, I appreciate it, but you don't have to do this. I was just doing my job. Your job is to patrol buildings, not save lives in the rain. And I'm not offering because I have to. I'm offering because I want to. Because my company needs people like you. He stood, preparing to return to his son's room. Think about it tonight. But Miss Brooks, when someone wants to help you, let them. That's not charity. That's just people being decent to each other. Imani watched him walk away, her mind spinning. She looked down at the 2 business cards in her hand, then at her phone showing 4:23 a.m. The rain had finally stopped outside. Through the emergency room windows, she could see the first hints of dawn turning the sky gray. One phone call. One choice to stay instead of walk away. And somehow, sitting in this hospital waiting room with wet clothes and aching feet, Imani felt like her entire life had just shifted on its axis. She didn't know where this road led, but for the first time in a long time, she felt something that had been missing, hope. Imani finally left the hospital at 5 a.m., catching a bus home as the city woke up around her. Her tiny apartment in Pilsen felt both familiar and strange as she let herself in, careful not to wake Tamara. Her sister had early classes, and the last thing Imani wanted was to disrupt her sleep. But Tamara was already awake, sitting at their small kitchen table with coffee and textbooks spread around her. You said you'd be late, not all night. Tamara looked up, concern clear on her face. What happened? Imani poured herself coffee and sat down, the whole story spilling out. Finding Jonathan, the ambulance, Richard Pierce and his offer. Tamara listened with growing amazement. Wait. Richard Pierce? As in Pierce Industries, the Richard Pierce? Tamara's eyes went wide. Imani, that company is huge. And he offered you a job. He said to call his assistant. It might just be a courtesy thing. Or it might be real. You saved his son's life. That matters. Tamara reached across the table and squeezed her sister's hand. Call them. Don't talk yourself out of this. After a few hours of sleep, Imani did call. Paul Jensen answered on the second ring, his voice professional but warm. Miss Brooks, Mr. Pierce told me to expect your call. He'd like to meet with you this afternoon if you're available. Would 2 p.m. work? Imani's shift didn't start until 10 p.m. Yes, that works. Perfect. I'll text you the address. And Miss Brooks. Mr. Pierce asked me to arrange a car service for you. It should arrive at your location at 1:30. That's not necessary, I can take the train. Mr. Pierce insists. He appreciates what you did for his son more than words can express. When the sleek black car pulled up to her building at exactly 1:30, Imani felt out of place in her simple blouse and work pants. The driver opened the door for her with a respectful nod, and she climbed into luxury she'd only seen in movies. Pierce Industries occupied 15 floors of a downtown high-rise. Imani had walked past it hundreds of times on patrol but never imagined stepping inside. Paul met her in the lobby, a trim man in his 40s with kind eyes and an efficient manner. Miss Brooks, welcome. Mr. Pierce is finishing a call, but he'll see you shortly. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? Water would be nice, thank you. Paul led her to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Imani accepted the bottle of water he offered and tried not to feel overwhelmed by the view. This was the world she'd guarded from the outside, never expecting to see from within. Richard Pierce entered 10 minutes later, looking more composed than he had at the hospital but no less sincere in his greeting. Miss Brooks, thank you for coming. How are you today? I'm well, sir. How's your son? Home and resting. Embarrassed, grateful, and asking about the security guard who found him. Richard smiled. He wants to thank you himself once he's feeling better. I'm just glad he's okay. So am I. More than I can say. Richard gestured to the chairs and they both sat a day. I asked you here because I meant what I said last night. I'd like to offer you a position with our corporate security team. Better hours than night patrol, better pay, benefits, and opportunities for advancement. Paul has the details if you're interested. Imani's heart raced. This was real. This was actually happening. What would the position involve? For the next hour, Richard and Paul outlined a role that seemed designed specifically for her skills and ambitions. Security coordination for the executive floors, managing access systems, liaising with outside security contractors. The salary made her head spin. It was nearly double what she made now, with health insurance and education benefits. We'd want you to start in 2 weeks, Richard concluded. That gives you time to give notice at your current position and prepare for the transition. What do you think? Every instinct told Imani to be cautious, to question why this was happening, to protect herself from disappointment. But Richard's words from the hospital echoed in her mind, when someone wants to help you, let them. I think yes, Imani said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Richard stood and extended his hand. Welcome to Pierce Industries, Miss Brooks. What would you do if a single act of kindness opened doors you never thought possible? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to follow Imani's journey from the streets to the executive floors. The following days passed in a blur. Imani gave her 2-week notice, fielding surprised questions from her supervisor about where she was going. She told the truth but kept it simple. Better opportunity, corporate position, time to move forward. Her last night of patrol felt surreal, walking the same routes she'd walked for 3 years. She paused at the spot where she'd found Jonathan, remembering the fear and the choice she'd made. Life turned on such small moments sometimes. Tamara helped her pick out professional clothes for the new job, using some of the money Richard had sent as a thank you. $5,000 had appeared in Imani's account with a note, "For your time, your compassion, and your quick thinking. With gratitude, Richard Pierce." Imani had cried when she saw it. Not because of the amount, though it was more money than she'd ever had at once. But because someone had seen her, truly seen her, and valued what she'd done. On her first day at Pierce Industries, Paul gave her a comprehensive tour and introduced her to the security team. They were professional, welcoming, curious about the new hire who'd come in through such unusual circumstances. Imani met their questions with honest answers and focused on learning everything she could. The executive floors were quiet compared to the night streets she was used to. Carpeted hallways instead of concrete sidewalks, soft lighting instead of harsh fluorescents. But the work itself was engaging, requiring attention to detail and quick problem-solving skills she'd honed over years of security work. On her third day, Paul called her into his office. "Jonathan Pierce would like to meet you, if you're willing. He's been back at work this week and keeps asking when you have time." Imani's stomach fluttered nervously. "Of course. When would be convenient?" He suggested coffee in the executive lounge tomorrow morning. 10 a.m. "I'll be there." That evening, Imani told Tamra about the meeting. Her sister grinned from her spot on the couch. "The billionaire's son wants to meet you for coffee. This is like something from a movie. It's just a thank you meeting. Don't make it weird." "I'm not making it weird. I'm just saying, you saved his life. That's a pretty big deal." Imani threw a pillow at her sister, but she was smiling. Maybe it was a big deal. Maybe it was okay to acknowledge that. The next morning, Imani arrived at the executive lounge 10 minutes early. The space was elegant but comfortable, with leather chairs, original artwork, and a coffee bar that rivaled any cafe in the city. She was examining an abstract painting when a voice spoke behind her. "That's a Kandinsky original. My father bought it at auction 5 years ago." Imani turned. Jonathan Pierce stood a few feet away, and the first thing she noticed was how different he looked from the unconscious man on the rainy street. He was tall, with dark hair and observant eyes, wearing a perfectly tailored suit but with an easy posture that suggested he didn't take himself too seriously. "Imani Brooks." He smiled and extended his hand. "I've been hoping to meet you properly." She shook his hand. "How are you feeling?" "Alive, thanks to you." His smile faded into something more serious. "I owe you everything, you know. If you hadn't found me, if you hadn't called my father, I don't think I'd be standing here." "I'm glad I was there," Imani said simply. "Coffee?" Jonathan gestured to the bar. "I make a decent cappuccino. It's one of my few practical skills." As Jonathan prepared their drinks with practiced ease, they talked. He asked about her first days at the company, and she mentioned still learning the systems. He shared stories about growing up in the business, the pressure and privileges of being Richard Pierce's son. Imani found herself relaxing, drawn in by his genuine interest and self-deprecating humor. "So you're taking online classes?" Jonathan handed her a perfect cappuccino. "What made you choose business administration?" "I wanted to understand how companies work from the inside. Security is important, but I wanted to see the bigger picture." "Smart. And now you're seeing it firsthand." Jonathan settled into a chair across from her. "My father doesn't offer jobs lightly. He sees something in you. I'm trying to prove him right." "I think you already have." Jonathan took a sip of his coffee. "Listen, I know this is forward, but would you want to have lunch sometime? Not work-related, just. I'd like to get to know the person who saved my life. If that's not too weird." Imani hesitated only a moment. "That's not weird. I'd like that." They exchanged phone numbers before Jonathan had to leave for a meeting. Imani sat in the lounge for a few more minutes, processing what had just happened. A job, a thank you, and now something that felt like the beginning of a friendship. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tamara. "How'd it go?" Imani smiled and typed back, "Good. Really good." The lunch happened 3 days later at a quiet bistro near the office. Jonathan insisted on picking the place, somewhere low-key where they could actually talk. Imani arrived to find him already seated, reading something on his phone and looking more relaxed than he did in the office. "Hey," he said, standing as she approached. Thanks for coming. I wasn't sure if asking was too presumptuous. It's fine. I'm curious about you too, honestly. Imani settled into her chair. The son of a billionaire who makes his own coffee and says thank you for everything. Jonathan laughed. My mother insisted on manners. She passed away when I was 16, but her lessons stuck. I'm sorry about your mother. Thank you. She would have liked you, I think. She always said the measure of a person is what they do when nobody's watching. He paused. You didn't have to stay with me at the hospital. Your shift was over. But you stayed anyway. I couldn't leave you alone. Most people would have. They ordered, and the conversation flowed easily from there. Jonathan asked about Tamara and Imani's life before Pierce Industries. She asked about his work, the diabetes management, what it was like growing up with wealth. Neither of them pretended the class difference didn't exist, but neither of them let it dominate the conversation either. Can I ask you something? Jonathan set down his fork. When my father offered you the job, did you hesitate? Imani considered lying, then decided against it. Yes. I almost said no. Why? Pride, maybe. Or fear that it was charity. That I hadn't actually earned it. And now? Now I'm grateful I said yes. Your father gave me an opportunity, but I'm the one who has to prove I belong here. That feels fair. Jonathan nodded slowly. My father judges people by their character, not their resume. He saw something in you that night. Your competence, your compassion. Those aren't things you can fake. He's been very kind to me. He respects you. There's a difference. Jonathan smiled. And for what it's worth, so do I. Over the next few weeks, lunch became a regular thing. Once a week, sometimes twice, Jonathan would text and ask if Imani was free. They tried different restaurants, discovered a shared love of Thai food, debated movies and books and whether Chicago deep dish actually qualified as pizza. Imani told Tamara about the lunches, and her sister's knowing looks became impossible to ignore. He likes you, Tamara said one evening. As more than a friend. We're just getting to know each other. Right. And I'm just casually studying, not totally stressed about finals. Tamara grinned. It's okay to like him back, you know. It's complicated. Only if you make it complicated. At work, Imani continued to excel. She streamlined the access control systems, identified vulnerabilities in the visitor check-in process, and built good relationships with the security team. Richard Pierce noticed, praising her work in a brief meeting that left her glowing with pride. You're exactly what this department needed, he told her. Fresh eyes and practical experience. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. One Friday afternoon, Paul asked Imani to come to Richard's office. She went with some trepidation, uncertain what the summons meant. Richard stood by his window overlooking the city. Miss Brooks, thank you for coming. Please, sit. Imani sat, her hands folded in her lap. I've been reviewing your work over the past month, Richard began. The improvements you've suggested, the initiatives you've started. I'm impressed. Thank you, sir. I also know my son has been taking you to lunch regularly. Richard's expression was neutral. I want you to know that your job here is not contingent on maintaining a friendship with Jonathan. Your position stands on its own merit. Imani felt her cheeks warm. I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Pierce. The lunches are just, we enjoy talking to each other. I'm glad. Jonathan needs good people in his life. People who see him as a person, not a bank account. Richard moved to his desk and pulled out a folder. I'm also glad because I'd like to offer you a promotion. A promotion? I've only been here a month. And in that month, you've proven yourself capable of more responsibility. I want you to take over as head of executive security. It comes with a salary increase and direct reports. Paul has the details. Imani's mind reeled. A month ago, she'd been walking night patrols in worn boots. Now she was being offered a leadership position at one of Chicago's largest corporations. Mr. Pierce, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Unless you have concerns. No concerns. Just gratitude. Thank you for believing in me. I believe in what I see, Miss Brooks. And I see someone with integrity, intelligence, and dedication. Those qualities are rare. Don't undervalue them. Imoni accepted the promotion, and the news spread quickly through the office. The security team congratulated her, and if there was any resentment about her rapid rise, no one showed it. They'd seen her work, seen her competence. She'd earned their respect. That evening, Jonathan texted, "Heard about the promotion. Congratulations. Dinner to celebrate?" Imoni stared at the message. Dinner felt different from lunch, more intentional. But she found herself typing yes before she could overthink it. They went to a steakhouse Jonathan loved, private enough for conversation but casual enough that Imoni didn't feel out of place. Over perfectly cooked ribeye and good wine, they talked about the promotion, the responsibility, Imoni's plans for the department. "You're going to be great at this," Jonathan said. "You have good instincts." "I hope so. I don't want to let your father down." "You won't." "But Imoni." Jonathan set down his wine glass. "Stop thinking about what you might owe us. You don't owe my father anything. You don't owe me anything. This job, this promotion, they're yours because you earned them. It's hard not to connect it all back to that night. Then connect it. That night showed who you are. Everything since has just confirmed it." He paused. "Can I be honest about something?" "Of course. I'm glad you found me on that street. Not because of what happened after, but because it meant I got to meet you. You're different from anyone I've known." Imoni felt her heart beat faster. "Different how?" "Real. Grounded. You don't want anything from me except conversation. Do you know how rare that is in my world? I imagine people treat you differently because of who your father is. They do. But you don't. Even after everything, you still see me as just Jonathan." He reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. "I like that. I like you." Imoni looked at his hand, then at his face. She saw hope there, and vulnerability, and genuine affection. She thought about all the reasons this might be complicated, all the ways it could go wrong. Then she thought about Tamara's words, "Only if you make it complicated." She put her hand in his. "I like you too." Jonathan's smile was worth every moment of uncertainty. They finished dinner talking about nothing important, just enjoying each other's company. When he drove her home, they sat in his car outside her building for 20 minutes, not wanting the evening to end. "Can I see you this weekend?" Jonathan asked. "Not lunch, not work-related. Just us." "I'd like that." He walked her to her door, a perfect gentleman. No pressure, no assumptions. Just a good night that held the promise of something beginning. Upstairs, Tamara was waiting with barely contained excitement. "Well," Imoni sank onto the couch, a smile spreading across her face. "I think I'm dating a billionaire's son." Tamara threw a pillow in the air in celebration. "I knew it. Tell me everything." And Imoni did, the words spilling out easily. For the first time in her adult life, she felt like things were falling into place. Not because of luck or chance, but because she'd made a choice that rainy night. She'd chosen compassion. And somehow, that choice had led her here. The weekend date turned into a Sunday at the Art Institute, wandering through galleries and debating the merits of modern art versus classical. Jonathan had strong opinions about Impressionism, and Imoni discovered she loved the precision of Renaissance paintings. They argued good-naturedly about whether art needed to be beautiful or just meaningful, neither convincing the other but both enjoying the debate. "You're stubborn," Jonathan said as they stood in front of a Monet. Says the man who spent 20 minutes defending a canvas of random paint splatters. That's Pollock, and it's about the energy of creation, not the final image. Imoni laughed. "Whatever helps you sleep at night." At work on Monday, their relationship remained professional. No one except Paul knew they'd spent the weekend together, and they both preferred to keep their personal lives separate from the office. Imoni focused on her new responsibilities, meeting with her team to discuss security protocols and building their trust in her leadership. One of her team members, a veteran named George who'd been with the company for 15 years, pulled her aside after a meeting. "You're doing good work," he said. "Some of us were skeptical when you got promoted so fast, but you know your stuff. Just wanted you to know we've got your back." "That means a lot," George. Thank you. The acceptance felt hard-won and genuine. Imani wasn't just Richard Pierce's charity case or Jonathan's girlfriend. She was earning her place through competence and dedication. Her relationship with Jonathan developed naturally over the following weeks. They found rhythms that worked for them, balancing time together with their own lives. Jonathan had his work obligations and charity commitments. Imani had her job and her sister and online classes that still required attention. How's the business ethics course? Jonathan asked one evening over Thai takeout in his apartment. Interesting. We're studying corporate responsibility and stakeholder theory. What's your take on it? Imani set down her pad thai. I think companies have obligations beyond profit. To their employees, their communities, the environment. But I also think those things can align with profit if leadership is smart about it. My father would agree with you. He's always said that taking care of people is good business. He practices what he preaches. The benefits at Pierce Industries are incredible. That's because he remembers what it was like before he made his money. He grew up working class, put himself through college. He knows what it means to struggle. Imani hadn't known that about Richard. The revelation made her respect him even more. Tamara met Jonathan officially a few weeks into the relationship, inviting him to dinner at their apartment with only slightly excessive warnings from Imani about not embarrassing her. I'm going to ask him about his intentions, Tamara had teased. Very serious sister stuff. But when Jonathan arrived with flowers for both of them and genuine interest in Tamara's pre-law studies, any awkwardness dissolved quickly. He asked her about her classes, her career plans, her thoughts on criminal justice reform. Tamara, never one to be easily impressed, was impressed. He's good, she told Imani later, after Jonathan had left. Like, actually good. Not just rich and polite. He listens. I know. And he looks at you like you're the only person in the room. That's rare, Imani. Don't mess it up by overthinking. When did my little sister get so wise? I've always been wise. You just noticed. The holidays approached, bringing the question of how to navigate family time. Jonathan invited Imani to his father's annual Christmas party, a formal affair with business associates and Chicago's social elite. Imani hesitated. That's a big step. Meeting everyone in your world. You've already met my father. The rest is just noise. Jonathan took her hand. But if you're not ready, I understand. No pressure. Imani thought about it. She could say no and preserve her comfort zone. Or she could say yes and step into something that still felt surreal sometimes. When someone wants to help you, let them. When someone wants to include you, let them. I'll need a dress. Jonathan's face lit up. I know someone who can help with that. Would you step into a world completely different from your own for someone you care about? Share your story in the comments and subscribe to see how Imani navigates the billionaire social scene. The someone turned out to be a personal stylist named Christina who met Imani at an upscale boutique and treated the whole experience like a fun collaboration rather than a makeover project. Jonathan says you like elegance over flash, Christina said, pulling dresses from the racks. Let's find something that feels like you, just elevated. They settled on a midnight blue gown, simple but stunning, with clean lines and subtle sparkle. When Imani tried it on, even she had to admit the transformation was striking. You look like yourself, Christina said approvingly. Just ready for a party. The night of the event, Jonathan picked Imani up in his car, and his expression when he saw her made every moment of preparation worth it. You're beautiful, he said simply. You clean up okay yourself. Richard's home was a lakefront mansion that took Imani's breath away. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, art that belonged in museums. Staff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres while guests mingled in designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Imani felt Jonathan's hand on her lower back, steadying and reassuring. Just breathe, he murmured. They're just people. Some interesting, some boring, all trying to impress each other. Richard found them within minutes, greeting Imani warmly and introducing her to various guests as the woman who saved my son's life and now runs our executive security. The description was both accurate and strategic, establishing her credentials before anyone could wonder who she was. The evening passed more pleasantly than Imani had anticipated. Yes, the wealth on display was staggering. But the conversations were varied and engaging. She talked to a museum director about security for priceless art, a tech CEO about cyber threats, a philanthropist about community safety programs. Jonathan stayed close but not possessive, letting her navigate conversations on her own while being available if she needed him. It was the perfect balance. "You're a natural," said a woman who introduced herself as Patricia, a longtime friend of Richard's. "Jonathan doesn't bring people to these things. You must be special." "I'm just me," Imani said. "That's what makes you special, dear." Patricia smiled knowingly. "Richard told me what you did. That takes character. Money can buy a lot of things, but not that." Later, Imani found herself alone with Richard on a balcony overlooking the lake. "Thank you for including me tonight," she said. "Thank you for coming. And for making my son happier than I've seen him in years." Richard gazed out at the water. "Jonathan's mother would have liked you very much. She always said the right person brings out the best in you. You do that for him. He does that for me too." "Good. That's how it should be." Richard turned to her. "I know this world can feel overwhelming. All this wealth, all these expectations. But don't let it change who you are. That person, the one who stopped to help a stranger in the rain, that's who we value." Imani blinked back unexpected tears. "I won't forget." "I know you won't." When Jonathan drove her home later, Imani felt like she'd passed some invisible test. Not because she'd impressed anyone, but because she'd remained herself throughout. "You were amazing tonight," Jonathan said as they sat outside her building. "I was terrified. You didn't show it. You talked to everyone like equals. Some of those people aren't used to that. Should I have been more deferential?" "God, no. You were perfect." He kissed her softly. "You're always perfect." Upstairs, Tamra was waiting with hot chocolate and questions. Imani described the party, the mansion, the guests. She showed her sister photos on her phone of the decorations and the view. "This is your life now," Tamra said wonderingly. "Dating a Pierce, going to mansion parties, wearing designer gowns. It doesn't feel real sometimes." "It is real. And you earned it, Imani. Not the gown or the party, but Jonathan. He chose you because of who you are. Don't forget that." Imani wouldn't. Even as her life transformed in ways she'd never imagined, she held tight to the core of herself. The woman who worked hard, loved her sister, helped strangers in the rain. Money and parties and mansions might surround her now, but they didn't define her. That person defined her. And she was enough. Winter settled over Chicago with characteristic intensity, but Imani barely noticed the cold. Her life had found a rhythm that felt both exciting and stable. Work challenged her in the best ways, with projects that stretched her abilities and a team that respected her leadership. Jonathan became part of her daily routine without overwhelming it, their relationship developing through shared meals and quiet evenings and conversations that went deeper than surface pleasantries. They learned each other's quirks and habits. Jonathan was a morning person who needed coffee before conversation. Imani preferred late nights and had a weakness for terrible reality TV. He was methodical and planned everything. She was spontaneous and liked leaving room for improvisation. Neither tried to change the other. They just adjusted, finding compromise in the middle. "Come to the foundation gala with me," Jonathan said one evening in January. They were at his apartment. Imani sprawled on his couch grading a paper for her organizational leadership class while he reviewed quarterly reports. "It's our annual fundraiser for youth education programs. I want you there." "When is it?" 2 weeks. Saturday night. Black tie, unfortunately, but the cause is good. We raised $2 million last year. Imani looked up from her paper. "What does the foundation do, exactly?" Jonathan set aside his reports, his expression shifting to something more passionate. "We fund after-school programs in underserved communities. Academic tutoring, arts education, college prep. My mother started it before she died. She believed every kid deserved a chance, regardless of where they were born. That's beautiful. It's important to me. More than the business, honestly." Dad runs Pierce Industries brilliantly. But this is where I think I can actually make a difference. Tell me more. They talked for an hour about the foundation's work, the programs they funded, the kids whose lives had changed because of educational opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. Jonathan's face lit up as he described a scholarship recipient who'd just gotten into MIT, a girl from the South Side who wanted to be an engineer. Her name is Keisha, Jonathan said. Then he paused. Wait, I shouldn't use her real name without permission. Privacy matters. But she's amazing. Brilliant mind, incredible work ethic. The foundation covered her test prep and application fees. Now she's going to one of the best schools in the country. You changed her life. We gave her resources. She changed her own life. That's the difference. Imani saw a side of Jonathan she'd glimpsed but not fully understood until now. He wasn't just a rich kid playing philanthropist. He genuinely cared about making an impact, about using his privilege to create opportunities for others. I'd love to come to the gala, she said. And maybe, could I get more involved with the foundation? I'd like to help if there's a way. Jonathan's smile was answer enough. I was hoping you'd say that. Over the next 2 weeks, Imani attended foundation meetings and learned about their programs. She met the executive director, a passionate woman named Sharon, who welcomed her insights on safety protocols for after-school sites. Imani found herself energized by the work, seeing parallels between her security experience and the foundation's need to create safe spaces for learning. You have good ideas, Sharon told her after one meeting. Have you thought about joining the board? I've been involved for 2 weeks. That seems fast. You're dating Jonathan, you work in corporate leadership, and you clearly care about the mission. That's what we need on the board. People who bring different perspectives and genuine commitment. Imani promised to think about it. The opportunities kept coming, each one building on the last. It would have been overwhelming except that each opportunity felt earned, tied to actual contributions rather than just her relationship with Jonathan. The gala itself was even more elaborate than Richard's Christmas party. Held at a historic hotel downtown, it featured a sit-down dinner, live auction, and performances by students from the foundation's arts programs. Imani wore a new dress, emerald green this time, and felt more confident navigating the social dynamics than she had at Christmas. You're getting good at this, Jonathan whispered as they took their seats. I'm learning. Richard was there, of course, and spent time at their table talking about the foundation's impact. But he also made a point of introducing Imani to other board members, positioning her as someone worth knowing rather than just Jonathan's girlfriend. During dinner, one of the board members, an older gentleman named Thomas, asked Imani about her background. I worked security for 3 years before joining Pierce Industries, she explained. Night shift, mostly commercial buildings downtown. That must have been quite a change, moving to corporate. It was. But the skills translate. Security is about paying attention, identifying risks, solving problems. That applies everywhere. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. Sharon mentioned you had ideas about site safety for our programs. Just observations from my experience. Making sure kids have safe routes to and from programs, proper lighting around buildings, clear emergency protocols. Basic stuff, but important. I'd like to hear more. Would you be willing to present at the next board meeting? Imani glanced at Jonathan, who gave her an encouraging nod. Yes, I'd be happy to. After dinner, the auction raised over $3 million for the foundation. Imani watched wealthy donors bid on luxury items and experiences, the money flowing easily for a cause they believed in. Jonathan bid on a week at a Colorado ski resort and won, immediately turning to Imani. Ever been skiing? Never. Want to learn? Why not? Later, as they danced during the reception, Imani felt the surreal quality of her new life wash over her again. 6 months ago, she'd been walking night patrols. Now she was dancing at a black tie gala, discussing board positions, planning ski trips with a man she was falling for. What are you thinking? Jonathan asked, pulling her closer. That this is a lot. Good lot or bad lot? Good. Just a lot. We can slow down if you need to. Imani shook her head. I don't want to slow down. I just want to make sure I'm keeping up. You're not keeping up. You're leading. Jonathan kissed her forehead. You joined the foundation and immediately started improving it. You took a security job and turned it into leadership. You're not following anyone's path, Imani. You're making your own. The words settled something in Imani's chest. She wasn't just along for the ride in this life. She was actively shaping it, contributing to it, earning her place in it. The distinction mattered. When Tamara asked about the gala the next day, Imani described the evening but focused mostly on the foundation's work. They do real good, she said. Programs that actually change lives. I want to be part of that. You're turning into a philanthropist, Tamara teased. I'm trying to use what I have to help others. Isn't that what everyone should do? When did my sister get so wise? I've always been wise, Imani echoed Tamara's words from months before. You just noticed. But the truth was, Imani felt like she was still learning. Learning how to navigate wealth without being corrupted by it. Learning how to accept opportunities without feeling like she didn't deserve them. Learning how to love someone from a completely different world while staying true to herself. Jonathan made it easier. He never made her feel less than, never treated her background as something to overcome. He valued her perspective precisely because it was different from his own. You keep me grounded, he told her one night. You remind me what matters. What matters? People. Kindness. Using what you have to make things better. My mother taught me that, but somewhere in business school and corporate life, I started to forget. You brought it back. Imani curled into his side on the couch, feeling the steady beat of his heart. We're good for each other. Yeah, Jonathan said softly. We really are. Spring came to Chicago gradually, the city thawing from its winter freeze in fits and starts. Imani had been with Pierce Industries for 6 months, and her relationship with Jonathan had settled into something that felt both comfortable and exciting. They'd found their rhythm, balancing work and personal time, individual pursuits and shared interests. But lately, Imani had been aware of a shift. The way Jonathan looked at her had changed, deepened. The casual touches lingered longer. The goodnight kisses grew more reluctant to end. They were approaching a threshold, and both of them knew it. The ski trip happened in March, a long weekend in Colorado that marked the first time they traveled together. Imani had been nervous about the trip, about what it might imply, but Jonathan had been clear about expectations. Separate rooms if you want them, he'd said when planning. No pressure, no assumptions. Just time away from Chicago together. They'd gotten separate rooms. But by the second night, after a day of Imani falling repeatedly while learning to ski and Jonathan patiently helping her up each time, after dinner by a fireplace and wine and laughter, the separate rooms felt unnecessary. Can I be honest about something? Imani asked. They were sitting close on a couch in the lodge, watching snow fall outside the large windows. Always. I'm falling in love with you. And it scares me a little. Jonathan turned to face her fully. Why does it scare you? Because it's real. Because it matters. Because I could get hurt. You could, Jonathan agreed. So could I. Loving someone always carries that risk. Do you? Love me? Yes. No hesitation, no qualification. I love you, Imani. I have for a while now. The confession hung between them, enormous and simple at the same time. Imani felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness but from the sheer relief of hearing words that matched what she'd been feeling. I love you too. Jonathan kissed her then, and it felt different from every kiss before. This one carried the weight of truth spoken aloud, of a future they were both choosing to step into together. That night, Imani didn't go back to her room. They stayed together, talking until dawn about everything and nothing. Their pasts, their hopes, their fears about what loving each other might mean. Jonathan told her about losing his mother, the grief that still surfaced unexpectedly. Imani told him about raising Tamara after their parents died in a car accident when she was 19, the responsibility she'd carried alone for so long. You're the strongest person I know, Jonathan said, holding her close. I don't always feel strong. Strength isn't about never feeling weak. It's about keeping going anyway. They returned to Chicago different than when they'd left. Not because anything dramatic had happened, but because they'd crossed into deeper territory. They were no longer just dating. They were building something that had permanence, weight, future tense. At work, they maintained professionalism, but Richard noticed the change. "You two look happy," he said to Imani one day, calling her into his office for a routine security update. "We are, sir." "Good. Jonathan deserves happiness. So do you." Richard paused. "You should know that I approve. Not that you need my approval, but for what it's worth, I think you're good for each other." "Thank you. That means a lot. Just promise me one thing. Don't let the money or the social pressure change who you are. You're valuable exactly as you are. I promise." Tamara, predictably, was thrilled when Imani told her they'd said "I love you." "Finally. I've been waiting for you two to figure it out. It wasn't exactly a mystery. We were pretty obviously falling for each other. To everyone except you, apparently." Tamara grinned. "So what's next? Moving in together? Engagement?" "Slow down. We just got to "I love you." But you're thinking about the future." Imani couldn't deny it. She was thinking about the future, about what it might look like with Jonathan in it permanently. The thought didn't scare her the way it might have months ago. Now it felt like possibility, like promise. Jonathan brought it up first, a few weeks after they returned from Colorado. They were at his apartment, cooking dinner together in the kitchen that had become almost as familiar as her own. "What do you want?" Jonathan asked, chopping vegetables with focused precision. "Long term, I mean. Marriage? Kids? Career ambitions? I want to know what you see for yourself." Imani stirred the sauce she was making, considering her answer carefully. "I want to keep growing professionally. Maybe run security for a major corporation someday, or consult. I want to do meaningful work with the foundation. I want Tamara to finish law school and launch her career. And yes, eventually, I want marriage and family. With the right person." "Am I the right person?" She turned to face him. "Are you asking hypothetically or specifically?" "Specifically." "Then yes. You're the right person." Jonathan set down his knife and pulled her close, not caring that his hands were still wet from washing vegetables. "I want all of that with you. Not right this second, but soon. I want to build a life with you, Imani. I want that too. No doubts. No concerns about our different backgrounds. Of course I have concerns. Money complicates things. But I love you anyway. And I think we can navigate the complications together." "We can," Jonathan said with certainty. "We will." The foundation board meeting where Imani presented her safety recommendations went well. She'd prepared thoroughly, creating a comprehensive proposal that addressed security concerns without being overly restrictive or expensive. The board approved her suggestions unanimously and formally invited her to join as the newest member. "You earned this," Sharon told her afterward. "Your ideas were solid and your presentation was professional. The fact that you're dating Jonathan is irrelevant." But Imani knew it wasn't entirely irrelevant. Her relationship with Jonathan had opened the door to the foundation. She just made sure to walk through it on her own merit, contributing value that stood independent of who she was dating. That balance became her guiding principle. Accept the opportunities that came from knowing Jonathan and Richard, but prove herself worthy of them through hard work and genuine contribution. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes people assumed she was just the girlfriend, there for show. But increasingly, people saw her as someone with her own skills and perspective. One evening in May, Jonathan took Imani to the rooftop of his building. They'd been there before, but tonight felt different. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with something in his pocket. "I love you," he said without preamble. "I love how you challenge me and support me. I love how you're kind without being a pushover, strong without being hard. I love who I am when I'm with you. I love you too. You know that." "I do. And I know we said we're not rushing anything. But I also know what I want." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "I want to marry you, Imani. Not today, not even this year if you're not ready. But someday. When you are ready." Will you think about it? Imani stared at the ring, her heart racing. This wasn't quite a proposal, more like a declaration of intent. A promise of a question to come when the timing was right. I don't need to think about it, she heard herself say. Yes. Someday. When we're both ready. Yes. Jonathan's expression transformed with joy. Yeah. He slipped the ring on her finger, a perfect fit. They stood on that rooftop as the sun set over Chicago, holding each other and laughing at the beautiful absurdity of it all. A woman who'd worked security in worn boots and a billionaire's son who made his own coffee. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. Later, when Imani showed Tamara the ring, her sister's eyes filled with tears. You're getting married. Eventually. We haven't set a date or anything. We're just committed to the idea. Mom and Dad would be so proud of you, Tamara said softly. Not because of Jonathan's money or status. But because you stayed true to yourself through all of this. You didn't let it change who you are. Imani hugged her sister tight. I had a good example. You've always been yourself too. We're the Brooks girls. We don't pretend to be anything we're not. That night, alone in her bed with the ring on her finger, Imani thought about the journey that had led her here. One choice on a rainy night. One phone call. One decision to accept help when it was offered. Each small choice building on the last until her entire life had transformed. But she was still Imani Brooks. Still the girl who'd raised her sister and worked hard for everything she had. Just now, she had more. More opportunities, more resources, more love. And she was learning that having more didn't mean being different. It just meant having more capacity to help others, to make a difference, to build something meaningful. With Jonathan, she could do that. Together, they could do that. That was what mattered most. The formal introduction to Richard as Jonathan's fiancé, not just his girlfriend or employee, happened over a private dinner at Richard's home. Imani had been there before for parties, but never like this. Just the three of them, intimate and significant. I already consider you family, Richard said when they sat down. But I'm glad to make it official. Welcome to the Pierces, Imani. Thank you for accepting me. Accepting you? Richard laughed. You saved my son's life and then proceeded to exceed every expectation I had. I'm grateful Jonathan convinced you to join our family. It was surprisingly easy to convince her, Jonathan said, squeezing Imani's hand. She said yes almost immediately. I know what I want, Imani said simply. They talked about wedding plans, though Imani and Jonathan hadn't made any concrete decisions yet. Richard offered to host the wedding at his home or help with whatever they needed, and Imani accepted the offer with gratitude rather than hesitation. My parents died when I was 19, she explained. Tamara and I don't have much family. So if you're willing to help, we'd appreciate it. Consider it done. But Imani, this isn't charity. This is family taking care of family. That's what we do. The distinction mattered to Imani. She was learning the difference between accepting help because she couldn't do something alone and accepting help because it was offered with genuine love and care. The former felt like weakness. The latter felt like belonging. Jonathan introducing Tamara to Richard formally happened a week later, over brunch at a restaurant Tamara had chosen. She was more nervous than Imani had been, fidgeting with her napkin as they waited for Richard to arrive. What if he doesn't like me? He'll love you, Imani assured her. Just be yourself. Richard arrived and immediately put Tamara at ease, asking about her law school applications and criminal justice interests. He listened intently as she talked about wanting to be a public defender, serving communities that couldn't afford private attorneys. That's admirable work, Richard said. Difficult but important. How can I help? Tamara blinked. Help how? Law school is expensive. If you're serious about public interest law, you'll graduate with debt that makes it hard to actually do that work. Let me cover your tuition. Consider it an investment in the justice system. Mr. Pierce, I can't accept that. Why not? It's too much. It's nothing to me and everything to you. And your family now. Family helps family. Richard's tone was firm but kind. Unless you have a philosophical objection to accepting help. Tamara looked at Imani, who nodded encouragingly. Take the help, Tam. You've worked hard. Let someone make it easier. Okay, Tamara said softly. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. By being the best public defender you can be. By helping people who need it. That's payment enough. Imani watched her sister's eyes fill with tears and felt her own throat tighten. This was what wealth could do when used with compassion. Not buying influence or demanding gratitude, but opening doors and creating opportunities. Later, Tamara hugged Imani in the parking lot. Your future father-in-law just changed my life. He's good at that. You picked a good family to marry into. They picked me too. The wedding planning began in earnest after that. Imani and Jonathan wanted something meaningful but not ostentatious. They compromised on a ceremony at Richard's home with about 150 guests, a mix of business associates, friends, and the smaller circle of people who actually mattered to them personally. Imani involved Tamara in every decision, wanting her sister to feel included. They picked flowers together, tasted cakes, debated whether to have a DJ or live band. Tamara threw herself into the planning with enthusiasm, grateful for the distraction from law school applications and LSAT prep. Have you thought about what you'll do after the wedding? Tamara asked one day while reviewing invitation designs. With work, I mean. I'll keep my job at Pierce Industries. Jonathan and I both want to maintain our own careers. That's good. You've worked hard to build that position. I have. And I'm not giving it up just because I'm getting married. The dress shopping expedition included Tamara, Sharon from the foundation, and Christina the stylist who'd helped Imani with gala dresses. They went to several boutiques before finding the perfect gown at a small shop in the Gold Coast. The dress was elegant and timeless, with delicate lace and a silhouette that felt both classic and modern. When Imani stepped out of the dressing room, Tamara started crying. You look like a bride, she said. A real bride. I am a real bride. I know, but seeing you in the dress makes it real. You're getting married. You're going to be happy. Imani hugged her sister, careful not to wrinkle the expensive lace. I'm already happy. The wedding is just making it official. Jonathan's contribution to the planning was enthusiastic but deferring. He cared about the details but trusted Imani's taste and judgment. The one thing he insisted on was writing his own vows. I need to say what I actually feel, he explained. Not some generic promises from a book. I'm writing mine too, Imani agreed. They didn't share their vows with each other beforehand, wanting the words to be fresh on the day itself. But Imani spent hours crafting hers, trying to capture what Jonathan meant to her and what their relationship represented. One evening, she showed her draft to Tamara. What do you think? Too sentimental? Tamara read through the vows carefully. They're perfect. Honest and heartfelt without being cheesy. He's going to cry. Good. I want him to feel everything I feel. The months leading up to the wedding passed quickly, filled with planning and work and ordinary life. Imani continued excelling at Pierce Industries, implementing new security protocols and earning praise from Richard and the board. Jonathan expanded the foundation's programs into 3 new neighborhoods. Tamara got accepted to Northwestern Law School with a full scholarship, thanks to Richard's connections and her own stellar academic record. Everything is falling into place, Imani said one night, lying in bed with Jonathan in the apartment they'd recently decided to share. It is. Are you happy? More than I ever thought possible. Sometimes I wake up and can't believe this is my life. Get used to it, Jonathan said, pulling her close. This is just the beginning. 2 weeks before the wedding, Richard threw them an engagement party. It was smaller than his Christmas gala but no less elegant, with close friends and family celebrating the upcoming marriage. Several of Imani's former colleagues from her security patrol days came, and she was touched by their presence. You look good, George from her old team said. Success suits you. I'm just me, George. Same person who walked patrols with you 3 years ago. Nah, you're better. Not different, just more. More confident, more sure of yourself. It's good to see. The party was full of moments like that. People recognizing Imani's growth while affirming that her core hadn't changed. She was still kind, still grounded, still real. Just now she had resources and opportunities she'd never had before. At the end of the evening, Richard raised a toast. To Jonathan and Imani. Two people who found each other in the most unexpected way and proved that the best things in life often come from simple acts of kindness. May your marriage be filled with love, laughter, and the same compassion that brought you together. Glasses clinked. People cheered. Imani looked at Jonathan and saw her future, bright and full of promise. Not because he was wealthy or because his family had opened doors for her, but because he loved her for who she actually was and she loved him the same way. That was the foundation they were building their marriage on. Not money or status or social position. Just genuine love and respect and partnership. Everything else was just details. The wedding happened on a perfect June day, with clear skies and temperatures in the mid-70s. Richard's home had been transformed into a garden paradise, with flowers everywhere and white chairs arranged in neat rows on the lawn. A string quartet played as guests arrived, and Imani watched from an upstairs window as the crowd assembled. Nervous? Tamara asked, adjusting her bridesmaid dress. No. Excited, but not nervous. Good. Because you look amazing and Jonathan is about to lose his mind when he sees you. The ceremony itself was simple and perfect. Imani walked down the aisle with Tamara beside her, the sister who'd been her family through everything. Richard stood with Jonathan as his best man, the father who'd welcomed Imani so completely into his life. The officiant kept the formalities brief, giving way quickly to the vows they'd written. Jonathan went first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Imani, when I woke up in that hospital and learned a stranger had saved my life, I wondered who you were. When I met you, I understood. You're the kind of person who stops to help, who calls for an ambulance, who stays when you could walk away. That compassion, that strength, that kindness, it's who you are at your core. And falling in love with you has been the easiest and best thing I've ever done. I promise to be worthy of that love. To support your dreams, celebrate your victories, and stand by you through challenges. To build a life with you that honors both where we came from and where we're going. To love you exactly as you are, today and always. Imani blinked back tears as she began her own vows. Jonathan, you could have treated me like charity, like someone to feel sorry for or rescue. But you didn't. You saw me as an equal from the first conversation. You valued my thoughts, respected my work, and loved me for who I actually am, not who I might become. You've shown me that accepting help isn't weakness, that letting people in is strength. With you, I've learned to build a life bigger than I imagined possible, not through your wealth but through your love and partnership. I promise to be your partner in everything. To challenge you when you need it, support you always, and love you completely. To build a future with you based on what matters, kindness, integrity, and making the world better however we can. The officiant pronounced them married, and Jonathan kissed his wife with a joy that made the guests laugh and applaud. Walking back down the aisle together, Imani felt like she was floating. This was real. This was her life now. The reception was elegant but warm, with excellent food and heartfelt toasts. Richard spoke about finding Imani that night at the hospital and knowing immediately she was special. Tamara told embarrassing stories from their childhood and thanked Jonathan for making her sister so happy. Friends and colleagues celebrated the couple with genuine affection. During the dancing, Jonathan pulled Imani close for their first dance. How does it feel to be Mrs. Pierce? Like coming home, Imani said honestly. Like everything finally makes sense. I feel the same way. They danced until Imani's feet hurt, talked with every guest, cut the cake with laughter and cake-in-face threats they didn't follow through on. It was perfect because it was theirs, a celebration that reflected who they actually were rather than what anyone expected. Later that night, in the honeymoon suite of a downtown hotel, they finally had a moment alone. We did it, Jonathan said, pulling Imani close. We did. And now we have the rest of our lives to figure out what comes next. What would it mean to build a life based on partnership and purpose rather than just passion? Comment below about what matters most in a lasting relationship, and subscribe to see how this couple creates something meaningful together. The honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, exploring Rome and Florence and the Amalfi Coast. They ate incredible food, visited ancient ruins, and talked endlessly about their future. What they wanted to accomplish, individually and together. How to balance work and family and giving back. "I want to expand the foundation," Jonathan said one evening over dinner in Positano. "Open more programs, reach more kids. And I want you involved in the leadership, not just the board. I'm not a non-profit expert. But you understand people and systems and what actually works on the ground. That's expertise the foundation needs." Imoni considered it. "I'd want to keep my role at Pierce Industries too. At least for now. Of course. Whatever balance works for you." They returned to Chicago tanned and refreshed, ready to step into their married life. They'd decided to buy a home together rather than staying in Jonathan's apartment, something that felt like theirs rather than his. The house hunting process was fun, exploring different neighborhoods and imagining their future in each space. They finally settled on a townhouse in Lincoln Park, close to the lake with enough room to grow into. Not ostentatious but comfortable, with a home office for Imoni and a study for Jonathan. Move-in day was chaotic but joyful, with Tamara helping unpack and Richard stopping by with a housewarming gift. "It's perfect," Imoni said, looking around at the boxes and furniture and the beginnings of their life together. "It will be," Jonathan agreed. "Once we actually unpack." Work continued to be fulfilling for both of them. Imoni's security innovations at Pierce Industries had attracted attention from other companies, and she'd been approached about consulting opportunities. Jonathan encouraged her to explore them. "You've built something valuable. Share it with others." She started taking on small consulting projects, helping other corporations improve their security protocols. The work was challenging and lucrative, building her professional reputation independent of Pierce Industries or her marriage to Jonathan. The foundation work became increasingly important to both of them. Imoni joined the executive committee and helped shape program expansion into underserved neighborhoods. She brought her security expertise to ensure safe environments but also contributed strategic thinking about community partnerships and sustainable growth. One Saturday, they visited a new after-school program the foundation had just funded on the South Side. Kids were everywhere, engaged in robotics projects, art classes, music lessons. The energy was electric, the possibilities tangible. "This is what it's about," Jonathan said, watching a girl build a robot with intense concentration. "Giving kids tools to build their own futures." "It's beautiful," Imoni agreed. "And we should do more of it." They talked on the drive home about establishing a scholarship fund in Imoni's name, specifically for young women pursuing careers in security or law enforcement. Not huge amounts, but enough to cover books and fees and the small expenses that added up. "I want to help girls who are like me," Imoni explained. "Smart and capable but without resources. Just a little bit of support can make all the difference." "Then let's do it. We'll announce it at the next gala." 6 months into their marriage, Imoni discovered she was pregnant. The news was unexpected but welcome, a new chapter opening before the previous one had fully settled. She told Jonathan over dinner at home, nervous about his reaction. "We're having a baby." His face transformed with wonder. "We are. I'm about 8 weeks along." Jonathan pulled her into his arms, laughing with pure joy. "We're having a baby. We're going to be parents. Are you ready for this?" "With you. I'm ready for anything." They told Richard and Tamara together, over Sunday brunch at the townhouse. Both reacted with emotional enthusiasm, Richard wiping away tears and Tamara immediately planning to be the best aunt ever. "This child is going to be so loved," Richard said. "So incredibly loved." Pregnancy changed Imoni's relationship with her body and her work. She continued at Pierce Industries but reduced her consulting projects, wanting to focus on the foundation and preparing for motherhood. Jonathan became overprotective in the sweetest way, making sure she rested and ate well and didn't overdo it. "I'm pregnant, not fragile," Imoni reminded him regularly. "I know. But you're carrying our child. Let me take care of you both." She let him, recognizing the difference between being taken care of because someone thought she was weak and being cared for because someone loved her. The distinction mattered. The scholarship fund in Imoni's name launched at the spring gala, with an initial endowment large enough to support 20 students per year. The announcement received thunderous applause, and afterward, several young women approached Imani to thank her. "You're making dreams possible," one girl said. "For people like me who want careers but need help getting there. Someone helped me once," Imani said. "I'm just passing it forward." That became her mantra, her approach to the resources she now had access to through marriage and work. She'd been helped, now she helped others. The cycle continued, expanding opportunity and creating possibilities. As her pregnancy advanced, Imani found herself reflecting on the journey that had led her here. From night security patrols to corporate leadership to foundation work to impending motherhood. None of it had been planned. All of it had stemmed from one choice on a rainy night. She'd stopped to help. And in helping someone else, she'd somehow helped herself. That was the lesson she wanted to pass on to her child. That kindness mattered. That accepting help was strength. That the best lives were built not on what you accumulated but on what you gave and who you loved. With Jonathan, she was building exactly that kind of life. And their child would grow up seeing it, learning it, living it. That was the legacy that mattered. Actually, the proposal had already happened on the rooftop months before. This chapter focuses on the baby's arrival and the deepening of their family bonds. Imani went into labor on a Tuesday morning, 3 days before her due date. She was at home, reviewing foundation proposals when the first contraction hit. Jonathan was at the office, but he answered on the first ring when she called. "It's time." He arrived home within 20 minutes, finding Imani timing contractions with remarkable calm. "Are you okay? Should we go to the hospital now?" "Not yet. First babies take forever. We have time." But they went to the hospital 2 hours later, when the contractions were close enough to make staying home impractical. Tamara met them there, having left class the moment Imani texted. Richard arrived soon after, pacing the waiting room with barely contained excitement. The labor was long but uncomplicated. Jonathan stayed by Imani's side the entire time, holding her hand and breathing through contractions with her. When the doctor finally said it was time to push, Imani felt fear and excitement in equal measure. "You can do this," Jonathan whispered. "You're the strongest person I know." 20 minutes later, their daughter entered the world with a strong cry. The doctor placed her on Imani's chest, and time seemed to stop. This tiny person, perfect and beautiful, half her and half Jonathan. Their daughter. "She's here," Imani whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She's perfect," Jonathan said, his own voice thick with emotion. "She's absolutely perfect." They named her Naomi Hope Pierce. Naomi because they both loved the name's meaning of pleasantness and sweetness. Hope because that's what their story had been about from the beginning. Hope that kindness mattered, that love conquered difference, that life could surprise you with blessings when you least expected them. Richard held his granddaughter with shaking hands, looking down at her with wonder. "She has your eyes," he told Imani. "And Jonathan's stubborn chin. She's going to be formidable." "She's going to be loved," Imani corrected. "Everything else is just details." Tamara, now in her second year of law school, was completely smitten with her niece. "Can I babysit? Please. I need practice for when I have kids someday." "You can babysit as much as you want," Imani promised. The first weeks with Naomi were exhausting and magical in equal measure. Imani had taken maternity leave from Pierce Industries, and Jonathan arranged his schedule to be home as much as possible. They navigated sleepless nights and feeding schedules and the overwhelming responsibility of caring for such a tiny human. "We're doing okay, right?" Imani asked one night at 3 a.m., feeding Naomi while Jonathan changed sheets after a diaper incident. "We're doing great. She's healthy and loved and we're figuring it out together. That's all that matters." Family became more important than ever during this time. Richard stopped by regularly, always calling first but making his presence felt as a devoted grandfather. He'd bring groceries or dinner or just his company, respecting their space while offering support. Tamara came over on weekends, studying for exams while holding Naomi and giving Imani and Jonathan breaks to shower or nap. The sister bond between them deepened through shared caregiving, Tamara seeing firsthand what Imani had done for her years before. You raised me like this, Tamara said one afternoon, rocking Naomi to sleep. Basically alone, without all the resources you have now. I don't know how you did it. I did it because you were worth it. Same reason I'd do anything for Naomi. You're a good mom. You were a good parent to me, and you're a good parent to her. The words meant everything to Imani. She'd worried about being a good mother, about whether her own upbringing had prepared her for this. But watching Naomi grow and thrive, she realized that love was the essential ingredient. Everything else could be learned. 3 months after Naomi's birth, Imani and Jonathan had their first real discussion about the future. What do you want to do about work? Jonathan asked. Whatever you decide, I support completely. Imani had been thinking about this constantly. She loved her job at Pierce Industries, but she also loved being home with Naomi. She loved the foundation work and the consulting and making a professional impact. But she also valued this time with her daughter that would never come again. I want to go back part-time, she decided. Keep my leadership role but reduce my hours. Spend mornings with Naomi, afternoons at the office. And continue with the foundation work because that feels important. That sounds perfect. Whatever you need to make it work, we'll figure it out. They hired a nanny to help during Imani's work hours, a woman named Grace who came highly recommended and immediately bonded with Naomi. Imani felt guilty at first about having help, but Jonathan reminded her of the lesson she'd learned long ago. Accepting help isn't weakness. It's smart resource management. You're doing important work at Pierce Industries and the foundation. Having Grace help with Naomi lets you do all of it well. The balance worked. Imani returned to work energized and focused, tackling projects with renewed efficiency. Her mornings with Naomi were sacred, spent playing and reading and watching her daughter discover the world. The afternoons at the office and foundation meetings filled her professional needs. Life settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable and fulfilling. Work, family, giving back, partnership with Jonathan. All the pieces fit together in a way that honored everything Imani valued. One evening, after Naomi was asleep and they had the house to themselves, Jonathan found Imani in the nursery, watching their daughter sleep. What are you thinking about? He asked softly. How much has changed? How one choice on a rainy night led to all of this? You saved my life that night. You saved mine too. Maybe not literally, but you gave me a life I never thought possible. Family, purpose, love. Everything I have now came from that moment. Jonathan wrapped his arms around her from behind. We saved each other. That's what love does. Imani leaned back against him, watching Naomi's chest rise and fall with sleep. Their daughter, their family, their life together. It was more than she'd ever dreamed of having. But it was also earned. Through choices and work and commitment. Through accepting help when it was offered and giving it back when she could. Through building a partnership based on respect and genuine love. This was what mattered. Not the money or the social position or the doors that had opened. But the people she loved and the life they were building together. Naomi stirred in her sleep, making the soft sounds that always melted Imani's heart. Their daughter would grow up with advantages Imani never had. But she'd also grow up with the values Imani held most dear. Kindness, hard work, helping others, staying true to yourself. Those lessons were the real inheritance. The rest was just details. 5 years after that rainy November night, Imani stood on the stage at the foundation's annual gala. Naomi, now 4 years old, sat in the front row between Jonathan and Richard, watching her mother with wide eyes. The room was packed with donors and supporters, all gathered to celebrate another year of impact. Thank you all for being here tonight, Imani began, her voice steady despite the significance of the moment. 5 years ago, I was working night security, walking downtown streets and hoping for something more. I didn't know what that more would look like. I just knew I wanted to make a difference somehow. She paused, making eye contact with Jonathan, who gave her an encouraging nod. One night, I found a man unconscious on the sidewalk. I called for help, stayed with him, made sure he wasn't alone. That choice changed my life in ways I never could have predicted. It led me to this work, this family, this community of people committed to creating opportunities for others. The audience listened intently as Imani outlined the foundation's accomplishments. Programs now in 15 neighborhoods, serving over 2,000 kids annually. Scholarship recipients heading to college. Kids discovering talents they never knew they had. Lives transformed through education and support. But the real story isn't about programs or numbers, Imani continued. It's about possibility. About what happens when someone extends a hand and someone else accepts it. About building a world where helping each other isn't charity, it's just what we do. She announced a major expansion of the foundation's work, funded by a significant donation from Pierce Industries and matched by other donors in the room. New after-school centers, expanded scholarship programs, arts education for kids who'd never had access to it before. We're calling it the Hope Initiative, Imani concluded. Because hope is what this is all about. Hope that kindness matters, that circumstances don't define destiny, that we can all be part of creating opportunities for others. Thank you for being part of this work. Thank you for believing in possibility. The applause was thunderous. People stood, moved by Imani's words and the vision she'd articulated. She stepped off the stage to Jonathan's embrace, Naomi rushing over to hug her legs. You were amazing, Mama. Thank you, baby. Later, at their table, Richard raised his glass in a toast. To Imani, who joined our family by saving my son and stayed by making the world better. You've exceeded every expectation and hope I had. Thank you for being who you are. Imani felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you for accepting me exactly as I was. For seeing my potential when I didn't see it myself. I saw what was already there, Richard corrected. You just needed opportunity to show it. The gala raised over $5 million that night, the most successful fundraiser in the foundation's history. But more than the money, Imani felt the energy in the room. People excited to be part of something meaningful. Donors becoming partners. A community forming around shared purpose. This was what wealth could do when used with intention. Not buying influence or status, but creating genuine change. After the gala, the family gathered at Richard's home for a quiet celebration. Naomi played with her grandfather while Tamara, now a successful public defender, caught up with Imani about her latest cases. I represented a kid today who reminded me of us, Tamara said. Brilliant but broke, trying to make a better life. I thought about how different things could have been if you hadn't had the resources to raise me. If Richard hadn't covered my law school. What happened with the case? I got the charges dropped. He's back in school, getting a second chance. That's what it's about. Second chances, opportunity, someone believing in you. Jonathan joined them, Naomi on his shoulders. Ready to head home? The drive back to their townhouse was quiet, Naomi falling asleep in her car seat. Imani looked out the window at the city streets, so familiar yet so different from when she'd patrolled them years before. Do you ever miss it? Jonathan asked, reading her thoughts. The simplicity of life before? Sometimes I miss the simplicity. But I don't miss the limitations. The fear of not being able to pay rent. The worry about Tamara's future. The sense that I was stuck. You were never stuck. You were preparing for this. Maybe. Or maybe I just got lucky. You made your own luck by being the kind of person who stops to help a stranger. At home, they tucked Naomi into bed together, a nightly ritual they both treasured. Their daughter mumbled sleepy questions about the party and why Memar had talked to so many people. Because we're helping kids have better lives, Imani explained simply. Giving them chances to learn and grow. Like you helped me. Exactly like that. After Naomi was asleep, Imani and Jonathan sat in their living room, decompressing from the evening. The Hope Initiative is going to change a lot of lives, Jonathan said. If we do it right. If we stay focused on impact over optics. We will. With you leading it, we will. Imani leaned against him, comfortable in the silence. They'd built something real together. Not just a marriage or a family, but a partnership dedicated to making a difference. Using their resources and positions to create opportunities for others the way opportunities had been created for her. The scholarship fund in her name now supported 50 students annually. The security consulting work had evolved into a respected practice. The foundation's programs were expanding. Tamara was helping kids who'd grown up like they had. Richard had become a devoted grandfather and continued mentor. All of it traced back to one night, one choice, one phone call. "I'm grateful," Imani said quietly, "for all of it. The struggles that made me strong. The help that lifted me up. The family that accepted me. The work that gives purpose. All of it. Me too. Though I'm especially grateful you found me that night and didn't just walk past. I couldn't walk past. That's not who I am. I know. That's why I love you." They sat together until late, talking about the gala and the new initiatives and Naomi's upcoming kindergarten year. Ordinary conversation about an extraordinary life they'd built together. When they finally went to bed, Imani checked on Naomi one more time. Her daughter slept peacefully, secure in a home full of love and possibility. This child would grow up with advantages but also with values. She'd see her parents working to help others, using their resources for good, treating people with dignity regardless of their circumstances. That was the real legacy. Not the money or the house or the social position. But the example of lives lived with purpose and compassion. Imani thought about the security guard she'd been 5 years ago, walking downtown streets with worn boots and limited options. That woman would be amazed by this life. But she'd also recognize it, because all of this had grown from seeds she'd planted. Hard work, integrity, kindness. Those qualities hadn't changed. They'd just been given room to flourish. She climbed into bed next to Jonathan, who immediately pulled her close. "Love you," he mumbled, half asleep. "Love you too." Imani closed her eyes, grateful for the journey that had led her here. The rainy night that changed everything. The phone call that started it all. The choices, big and small, that had built this life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. The foundation work would continue. Naomi would grow and learn. Tamara would defend more clients. The family would expand and evolve. But tonight, Imani just felt grateful. 4 second chances and new beginnings. For family, chosen and born. For a life that honored both where she'd come from and where she'd arrived. She'd found a billionaire's son unconscious on a rainy street and called for help. That simple act of compassion had transformed both their lives. Not because of the money or the social position, but because it had connected two people who needed each other. Who built something meaningful together. Who chose love and purpose over ease and comfort. That was the story Imani would tell Naomi someday. Not about fancy parties or expensive houses. But about kindness rewarded, help accepted, and lives intertwined through choice and chance and commitment. It was a story worth telling. A life worth living. A future worth building. And it all started with one choice on a rainy November night. The choice to stop when others might have walked past. To help when it would have been easier not to. That choice changed everything. And Imani wouldn't change a single moment of the journey that followed.